Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Gitchier-Hartman from the Phys Ed Summit team and the Phys Edagogy team. I'm a middle school physical educator in St. Louis, Missouri in the United States. Tonight, but tomorrow morning for these guys, I am joined by Dan Popescu, Daniel Inman, and Evan Godsiff for their presentation titled Experiences Teaching PYP PE, Challenges and Benefits. Before we get started with their session, I just want to remind you of a couple things. First of all, we do have a survey available for all of our participants. It's on our website. If you fill it out, we will send you a certificate of participation via email. And if we run into any technical difficulties, I promise you we will fix them. Just let me know about them in the back channel. Ready, guys?
Yep.
All right, go ahead and introduce yourselves, please.
All right, I'll go the first one. So, my name is Dan. I am originally from Cluj, Romania, so very far away from home. This is my 12th year living abroad. I spent a few years in United States, mostly in Chicago, then moved to Emirates, and now in China. This is my 3rd year teaching PYP PE, and I had the opportunity to meet Daniel at APEC Hong Kong, and then Daniel brought in Evan for this session. And that's pretty much it. Ready to go for it.
Okay, my name is Daniel Inman. Not sure if it's Sharon or not, but my name is Daniel Inman. So I've taught PE for 12 years now. This is starting my 12th year, but it's my 2nd year teaching PYP and my 2nd year teaching in Kaohsiung City, Taiwan. So PYP was a new experience for me, a little bit different from teaching back home in North Carolina. And Dan and Evan have both been a great help just bouncing ideas off of.
And my name's Evan Godsiff. I'm in a very similar boat to Dan. I am in my 2nd year teaching in Korea, but in my 2nd year overseas as well. I remember listening to Dan on the Roundtable, maybe the first Phys Ed Summit or 2nd Phys Ed Summit, Daniel, I mean. And I am a beginner in the PYP, so that's why I'm here, sharing some of the challenges, and we'll be sharing ideas back and forth as we go. Yeah, so ready to go?
Sounds good.
Yep.
That looks great, Daniel. You're ready.
Awesome. Okay, so obviously welcome to our session, Experiences Teaching the PYP Phys Ed, the challenges and benefits that we've went through over the past couple years. Brief picture of us. There'll be more contact information at the end of the slideshow.
Yeah, just a couple of things to think about. What is our main objectives as we go through? What could someone gain from our session as you're looking at it? Maybe someone new to the PYP like us. Maybe there will be people considering and joining a PYP school. And then any elementary teacher or any teacher really in general, what could you learn from the PYP approach that we're going to share about?
All right, so this is our very short agenda. We will start our session with just a quick introduction on the setup, exactly what the IB language and how we have our unit structured. Then we're going to talk, all of us, about our facilities, and shortly we're going to share one unit. And then towards the end, we're going to have a roundtable talk about what we found a little bit more difficult or what is advantages in this setup. Also, hopefully, by that time, the audience will have few questions for us and be happy to assist. Now, moving forward, in PYP setup, which PYP stands for Primary Years Program. This is equivalent in around the world, grade K, pre-KK to grade 5. Grade 5 students move to MYP, which are grade 6. Now, in PYP, everything is structured in 6 main transdisciplinary teams. So everything you can see there, the language, social studies, math, art, and obviously physical education, which we call it personal, social, and physical education, is structured around these big 6 teams. And who we are, showing the planet, how is ourselves, and you can see all the other ones. Now, within these 6 units, we're looking into developing few skills. And the 5 main skills, move the next slide, you'll see the 5 main cross-curriculum skills, look into social skills, self-management, thinking, communication, and research. So we are supporting, what I think is nice in this setup is that homeroom teachers and other specialists, music and art, have exactly the same setup. So when we're talking about self-management skills in PE, the students can really easy make a connection with what's happening and what that skills address to. So this is just the foundation of PYP.
Yeah, and on a similar theme to that is the 8 key concepts that the IB has identified that, just like Dan was talking about, enables the students to connect their learning across all the subject areas. So it's designed to deepen understanding, just go beyond facts. For example, one of the key concepts is connection. In phys ed, we can look at, in our invasion games unit, we looked at connections between invasion games and where and how we play them, how strategies are similar and different. But also we want to help students to connect with where they would put that into action out into the real world. So the concepts drive our instruction rather than just sort of facts.
And from that, we get into the learner profile. There are 10 pieces to this in the PYP. This does flow over into the middle school and the high school program for IB, so that helps. But with each of our units, we go into detail with 1 or 2, maybe 3 of these, depending on what school you're at. So a lot of my units center around being a great communicator, and that's not just being willing to speak, but being willing to listen and becoming that positive, good listener. But all of these are taken into effect as we teach our units. And from there, we go into what's called the learner attitudes. And these are ideas, hopefully, by the end of PYP, all of our students can name these 12 items and how they use them in PE, in math, in science, and everything else. So again, there are 12 of these, and it's independence. I can do this by myself. Respect. I'm respectful to others. I work with others. Equipment, things like that.
All right, so next I'd like to share one of my units, which I was very successful this year with grade 5s, which I think most of the new teachers to PYP will find very, very useful. But before that, just a few words about our curriculum. It's very similar as in a British or American curriculums. It's just that we have everything structured in 5 main categories, and you have individual pursuit, where we're chasing athletics, gymnastics, and swimming. We have adventure challenges, try to challenge kids to find their own ways to solve different problems and give them, you know, kind of orienteering tasks and activities. We look at health-related fitness. It's a big one, not just exercising. Recently, I'm looking into sleeping patterns. Then looking at movement composition. It's basically types of dance or movement to music. And then in games is a big one. It's a big one. This is our structure here at Swiss, at Shenhua International School, where I'm teaching currently, but also it's a main framework for all PYP schools. You'll find similar things. That's why I think it's easy to get a grasp on this setup. Within games, we have all known games like invasion games, strike and fielding games, net, wall, and we have cooperation games. So try to cover as much as possible during the units. In here, I see that the students twice a week, 45 minutes each session for PE, and I see them once for swimming. We're very lucky. We're swimming all year round. And you're going to sit on the next slide, Daniel, if you're kind enough to move on. We are lucky. We're swimming all year round. We have an indoor pool. We have pretty good facilities, so we can have indoor and outdoor activities. Basically, the 45 minutes are not back-to-back, are different days. So that's kind of nice because you can have a different level of exercising. And moving into the unit I want to share, it was a unit done on very courageously on parkour and urban dance. We had a gymnastics and dance unit collaborate together. So what happened is I want to do something new for these kids. So I came in with this idea of parkour and urban dance. Now the way it starts, you can see very clearly on the previous slide, Daniel, that we have the PYP, we call it carousel. before each unit starts, a week before, all of us, all teachers, let's say grade 5, all teachers, primary, the homeroom teachers, the arts, the music, the librarian, ICT, we all meet together and look into links. How can we support the whole central idea for the class? And we are asked to 1 or 2 units to have authentic connections. I give an example very briefly. If they are studying forces and angles in math, I'm looking at strike and field unit. Because I can put in the angle of hitting, the forces involved, and they can think for themselves. Now, what happens is if there's no connection at the authentic, at the central idea, they're going to move on to the learner profiles and attitudes, or we just create a standalone unit. Now, this unit, you'll see on the next slide, it was very authentic connected. Our central idea was by using a variety of body parts, we can create a performance interested in an audience. Now, we create a lot of debate around this central idea. Because their idea, for example, in parkour was we go up, climb on an obstacle, we jump down. When I asked them, do you think that's interesting for an audience? How about if you have speed and you do a kick as you jump over it, use only one hand for support? So we try to encourage them to have this kind of like aesthetic and interesting for an audience approach. Now, I was really lucky with this unit because it was done in a collaboration with art and music. And we, based on the key concept, change, causation, and responsibility, I had these lines of inquiry, changing roles from choreographer to performer, type of specific movement and their influence on outcome, and making appropriate choices. There was a big thing on safety here when looking into this parkour unit. And with art, I asked our teacher if we can create some, because this unit was set up to have a learning celebration. So I asked our teacher if there's any way we can create some urban art, and this is what came at the end. When we have our showcase in front of every grade 3, 4 primary children, we had these huge, massive boards with their own artwork, with urban city, landscape, and copies after their own dance postures cut on the plastic cardboard, colored, and put up. It was amazing. Now, regarding the parkour activities, we're looking into things like, on the next slide, we're looking into climbing, jumping, free running, forward and sideways rolls, quadrupedal movement. We'll look some specific exercises that we can strengthen our upper body and lower as well for speed and for strength when you look at the support. And basically, I went into the storeroom and we took all the accessible equipment, everything I found, benches, springboards, vaults, everything, and created a sort of obstacles around the gym. We can practice our parkour skills. And you can see the next slide, just few photos on during the lessons where we actually practice our parkour skills and try to develop some routines. On urban dance, which I was quite fascinated to see they really enjoyed this unit. I didn't expect that. We're looking into different kind of techniques. I showed them, probably you know that in Japan, it's a big thing. So if after dark, like after 8, 9 o'clock, you'll see all these glass windows, kids going in front of them and dancing all over the city. That's quite a big thing there. So based on that approach, we're looking into breaking the whole class in small groups. I want them to work independent so they can create their own movement music. They had, with a music teacher support, the choice to choose their own songs. We'll look at language. It's very important not to have bad language. And this time looking into locking, b-boying, and popping. So locking, basically, it means like you're freezing from you go to a fast moment and you freeze in a slow move and again fast and again slow. Boys enjoy popping, which are robot dance and wave styles. And we tried also some break dancing. And you can see the next slide, some of the photos in our dance studio where we actually practice our own routines. All that urban dance was developed independently. They create it, they own it, and they present it. You can see on the next slide the setup, the actual setup. we chose this unit to end the learning celebration. It's what we call the showcase. So in the last week of the unit, we put up a massive show, and we just share with upper primary, being grade 5 kids, show upper primary, we share what we have learned in this unit. And this is us performing in the gym. One class was doing parkour skills, and 2 others, they were dancing. And that's pretty much for an idea.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about similar things, what I do. I work at Yushu International School in southern Taiwan. We've been a PYP school for 12 years now. Again, this is just my second year there. So in PYP, it's just like Dan just talked about. So Adventure Challenge, games units, health-related fitness pursuits, and movement composition, and slow me down if I'm going too fast. But I do have the freedom to develop and fulfill these units how I see fit. Luckily, compared to what I've read on the back channel, I do see my kids twice a week for 50-minute blocks on campus. We also have a 100-minute sports activity block once a week that I kind of co-coordinate with some of the classroom teachers, and it's usually based on whatever athletics is going on. So if the teams are playing basketball at the moment, we may do basketball skills and drills and things like that. So my facilities, I have an indoor activity center. It's the top left there, which is a parking garage. If you notice the columns in the middle and whatnot, so it's the lower level of a parking garage that we put mats and rubberize the floor slightly and things like that. Then I have a decent-sized soccer pitch, a 85-meter track with some volleyball nets set up on it, but I can take those down pretty easily, 2 basketball courts, 2 dance rooms, and we have access to a 50-meter lap pool at the university, and we're associated with a university that is literally next door to us. Like this is about a 6-minute walk for my 3rd graders, and we use the swimming pool twice a year for 2 5- to 6-week sessions. And yes, my facilities are pretty cool. So what I'm talking about is an Adventure Challenge unit or a Cooperative Games unit, and this was a grade 1 and 2 unit that I did towards the end of last year. So the central idea for this unit was working on a team can build self-worth and personal responsibility. And then I looked at the key concepts as causations, how do what we feel impact our relationships. And then I looked at responsibility, showing leadership through the activity, motivation to be involved. And then as with any unit I do, we use a lot of reflection. How can we do this better? How do we need to be good communicators, good listeners, good speakers? So these are just some images from some of the activities. We did this a variety of inside and outside depending on the weather. I tried to be outside as much as possible, but so we can do a little bit. Grade 1 and 2 did pretty good with this. I'm going to do it a little bit earlier in the year, but it's all about just getting the kids to work together, talk together, discuss, and be willing to work with not their best friend.
Cool. Thanks, Dan, for sharing that. And actually, we just talked. He's going to share his resources for Adventure Challenge and Cooperative Games with me because I need to have a few more ideas this year. So yeah, I'm at TCIS, which is a smaller school. I don't know, smaller than you guys, right? I have 400 students K through 12, only 100 in the PYP. So this year, I actually see every student every day, which is new. Then that will change how I teach, obviously. So that's what I'm working through my scope and sequence. Last year I saw them twice a week for 50 minutes, which I think is fairly typical. Like many people, my program goal is students physically active for life, and the IB definitely encourages that. It's looking at creating lifelong learners, right? So this was my second unit ever in the PYP, the games unit. So and you can flip the slide there, Dan. I muddled my way through it a little bit, right? Having a central idea, which was finding similarities or differences in games leads to changes in performance, was new for me, and that was something we kept coming back to. I found that for me, the art of asking the right questions is what I am really working on. Nathan and Andy and these guys that are experienced PYP practitioners make that seem easy, but it's something that is going to continue to develop for me. And as long as I'm reflective, and I encourage the kids to be reflective a lot as well, looking at what we can continually improve on, and that's our goal, right? But I've taught a ton of invasion games and a ton of games in the past, and I think, as most of us do, we have a tendency to over-plan and to plan a ton of activities, and within the PYP model, I had to be more open to within each class, where would the inquiry go? So different classes change the rules and the modifications in different ways, and so that was new learning for me. You can flip to the next one, Dan. Just a couple of things to look at. I mean, I was trying to make it visible. Andy Vesely got to come and teach us at our school, and so I'm always trying to make it more obvious for the students what we're trying to learn. A lot of my students were used to being told the answers or told what to do, and weren't really used to having to stop and think. So within this games unit, we went from really simple capture the flag, sort of just general offense and defense categories, to then getting into more variations of sport, but never what you would think of as the actual sport, highly modified, small-sided games. And within each lesson, we would change the equipment from handball to soccer to sort of dribbling, basketball type. And I really tried to get the students to think. You can see the little visual. We just showed some videos of different invasion games, and I wanted them to notice what are the similarities, and we kept coming back to that throughout the unit as the day's lesson went on. One thing that I would learn or take away is I think I mentioned it earlier too, but just being willing to see where that inquiry goes. Sometimes direct instruction is very important. There's nothing wrong with direct instruction, but sometimes the students have an idea, what would happen if we did this, or what would happen if we did this? And that's something I've got to get more comfortable doing. But yeah, so that's just a brief overview, and I don't know if now's a good time to ask any questions, or we're just going to go into some of our challenges.
Well, we do have some questions coming in from the TASL. So one of them that came through, I know, Daniel, you saw it. It was written by another Daniel. It said, is there a way that someone could access a sample interdisciplinary themed yearly plan? This teacher teaches 55-minute classes and sees their students once every 6 school days. So they're wondering, how do you guys fit all of this in?
It's just like teaching for me back in North Carolina. It's a pick and choose. I pick what I think is the most important, and I add that in to my unit. So I try to take what the classroom is doing and incorporate that and go from there. So at least that's what I do. I'm not sure about Evan and Dan. And as for finding a yearly plan, I'll be honest, I base a lot of mine off what I found with Nathan Horan's website, which is linked down below on TASL, just his IFAS ed, and looking through some of how he's done things and talking to him and Andy Vasily and different people. So that's where I've gotten the base of mine, and I'm still building my yearly plan because they've asked me to completely revamp the curriculum at the school for PYP. So that's been an interesting challenge this year.
Awesome, thank you. And then, Evan, a question that I have just for some clarification is, when you're having your students find the similarities or differences in games, and you're saying that it leads to changes in performance, do you mean that it changes, like it improves their performance, they have positive changes, they're making more connections? Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I hope so, and I really want them to see, I guess, how it leads to different roles within the game as well. I guess the central idea, being brand new, maybe the central idea should change as well. I don't know. I saw improvements in their performance, but I'm not necessarily sure that I was able to connect. You know what I mean? Like what I was hoping they would see from it. So, because my general outcome in invasion games is more that they can figure out how to move into open space and when to, who to defend and how to guard and when to attack. And so, the idea of that central idea was that it might, more pressure might lead to worse performance because we change the rules to benefit the defense, or if we modify a rule to allow more space, more attackers and less defenders, sure, that would be a positive change in performance. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Can I add just
Sarah,
Go ahead, Dan.
go ahead. Go
No,
ahead. I
you
want
go
to
ahead,
add, before we move on what you said, Sarah, how do we find connections? The whole setup, the PYP planner, it should be available before the school ends. So, fact, this year, like in May, I had access to the whole overview, and knowing what I'm teaching this year, I'm asked to find 2 units I can link authentically, and it's my responsibility as a specialist to contact the classroom teacher or other specialists and try to find some ways to communicate. Now, the culture in PYP setup, it's usually classroom teachers are very accessible, very supportive. They actually ask us when they send newsletters, they go, okay, so P, what do we send to the parents? So it's quite convenient if you do it in time. If you go right, like, okay, tomorrow you start Monday a unit, you go, I want to do this. It's too late. I suggest for everyone to go a few weeks in advance, contact the classroom teacher, share the ideas, maybe have a 10-15 minutes brief meeting with that teacher, and I am 100% that there will be support. It happened before. Each year it happened the same way. Actually, they like to see this happening. Like now, currently on a health-related unit with fitness with grade 5s, the classroom teacher will talk about a little bit establishing the sleeping patterns. Looks like our kids are staying too late in the evening. I don't know what they're doing. So they want us to talk a little bit more about the sleeping patterns and what happens when we sleep and why do we sleep. It's very basic things, but you can develop from a simple question like why do we sleep, you can develop a whole range. One kid told me that because we're like iPads, we run out of battery, so we have to plug ourselves in, But you can go deeper than that, and they start to understand that 90% of what's happening with us is subconscious, and that's what happens mostly when we sleep. So it's simple questions lead to more complicated and so on. But again, going back to what you said, we as specialists, if you want to do something with that unit, you want to go and contact the person, ask for help, they will support. I'm not a music specialist. I don't know how to find the best songs. I'm not an art specialist for sure. I don't know what fits well with the unit, but they know. So just asking the right things, it might help you to support. We have also in grade 5 exhibition process each year, and some students will choose a PE related topic, and you're going to support those kids for 5-6 weeks towards their presentation.
Awesome. Thank you.
I was just going to chime in that one of the things that I try to connect with is the skills that Dan referenced and the ATL skills, the social and self-management, that really regardless of the unit are sort of underlining almost more character skills, and sometimes the students seeing it in a different setting in physical education or music or art, they can connect back to their homeroom or school life in general as well. Is Daniel there?
Yeah, sorry.
Daniel,
no, I mean,
say something.
Well, I mean, I was going to go back to something somebody asked on Tazel about the facilities. I know at least with me, my facilities at school, they're great, but I'm one of 5 PE teachers using those facilities. So it's quite a juggling act trying to figure all of that out, which is interesting.
Yes, yes, we have. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so sorry to cut back a little bit, but yeah. One of my biggest issues at school is just dealing with the my school is 90% native Taiwanese, so dealing with the English, trying to get them to understand the words I'm using, which is always interesting. So
it's one of the challenges.
Exactly.
Looking here, probably one of the most difficult is the inquiry-based approach. I don't know if it happened with you guys as well. I thought before a couple of years PE and coming into the IB setup 2.5 years ago, 21 months, I was like, what's happening? So the first few weeks I was like, oh, I'm a bad teacher or what? How can I teach this language? How can I get my point across? Because everything from direct instructions it transformed into an inquiry-based approach where we have to get kids find the right answer, and even those like silly things, like, you know, with grade twos, you will try to trick them that a badminton racket is actually a spoon, and they'll convince you that, oh, it's not a spoon, it's actually a badminton racket, and then you hold it from the wrong side from the net, like, oh, no, no, you have to. So just like playing this role of making them curious, because I think we're born inquirers. We try to discover things, and every time we learn something on ourselves. I mean, how many times you were, you know, told, oh, this hurt, but until you hit yourself on the issue, you never feel it. And same thing, I think, goes to inquiry-based approach. Just let them speak. I'm lucky enough to have the opportunity at least half the time of my teaching have student-led activities. I give them assignments. For example, it's a creation game unit. I encourage them to create their own units. It can be invasion games. It can be tag games. It doesn't matter. We have a tour of the storeroom. They have the freedom to choose everything they want, and they come up with a plan, and they will have to write down the basic rules and how we score points. So that's quite. It was hard at the beginning, but it gets easier. And yes, with the support of previous PYP teachers that, you know, shared a lot on their own websites or different summits, plus IBO. It's a huge resource. It might be difficult at the beginning to understand the language, but gets easier. And I think it was one of the difficult things, just to get this mindset to let them ask the question, let them come with the answers.
I agree. I would say that's a challenge, and also in some ways a benefit, in that we don't feel the pressure to sort of crank out curriculum at any particular pace. The IB or a PYP really does care about the whole child, which gives you that freedom to investigate, and it's quite tricky to have genuine connections, but students, especially in our setting, will have aha moments. Oh, because they might not have connected that, but once they're moving, or we know how kinesthetically, you know, we can just connect with different students. I also have found that many of my ELL students, because we can model and demonstrate, I'll occasionally give a direction and realize, oh, I needed another visual, or I needed another model there, and that's just good teaching, but allowing us to slow down and not hurry through the content, because there's so many other little, especially the ATL skills, to focus on throughout every situation. I find quite freeing, I guess.
Daniel, do you wanna go? Oh, I can hear myself. Do you wanna go back on? Oh, I can hear myself.
Yeah.
Do you wanna go back on your, so we can see your face? I think you can stop sharing the slides so we can. I'd like to. Nice to see you around. There you go. A big thing that I think it's both challenges. It's challenging for the first part, and then becomes a benefit. And probably you guys are gonna agree with me. It's planning. It's killing me. I'm spending a lot of time, you know, in the office than, you know, with the kids. Just this idea of you putting your unit within the school unit and just finding the right wording, and this is planning for success basically with students. That I think was quite challenging. Don't you agree with that?
I agree. I'm still figuring that out. Where you did a lot of that collaboration planning with teachers last year, I did very little. I would look at their units and try to incorporate. I'm required to do one incorporation a year, even though I try to do 2 or 3. But it's just trying to find that time within the teaching day. Given my schedule is a lot more open than it was in the United States with the public school, but it's at the same time, when I'm free, the classroom teachers are teaching. So it's just finding those few minutes here and there. And I've done it with a couple of places, which is great, but it is very challenging trying to get that planning, and also trying to change what I did for 10 years and switch it into a PYP style.
Mm-hmm.
You know, using the language, using the terms, using, as y'all know, Atlas Rubicon, which is just our computer program we use for planning.
Yeah, I saw a question, if I could chime in, Sarah, just saying, like, does the inquiry approach, you know, cause management and safety issues? And I think like inquiry is not just like free for all or explore. And like we're talking about now, it requires a lot more planning. You've got the outcome or the end goal in mind, but just how you get there is different. And so you're still your classroom management and the way you set things up. It's more student led, but at least I haven't found it to be a major issue. And I mean, I don't know, at my school, many of the students are really great, but they're just not used to being provoked to thinking in physical education. It's still somewhat of the mindset, culturally here, that PE is a little bit of the lowest at the totem pole in terms of perceived importance, even though we know that it's not, and that's like our continual message. The students sometimes come with that, just like every kid everywhere. What are we doing? Instead of what are we learning, or what are we trying to, provoke for the rest of our life here. So I haven't found safety or management issues, but that's just all in how you set up your class. True inquiry, has some direct instruction, but it's just every class will be slightly different in how we're going towards those outcomes. Would you guys agree?
Agreed. And just like Evan said earlier, inquiry, there's sometimes it works really well in PE, and there's other times where you have to use direct instruction. And that's kind of those battles you pick and choose. And the administration at my school, at least, understands that sometimes inquiry is all about inquiry, like a movement composition dance unit. But other than that, sometimes it's direct, sometimes it's indirect with the inquiry, and giving a lot of student-led activities and projects and whatnot.
Adding on this, I think you need to establish the difference between that's how you set up your class, as you said, Evan and Daniel. It makes a difference between rules and essential agreements. Now, it's one thing I like having essential agreements, which would focus on positive things. You won't say we are not pushing each other. You will say we will play nice to each other, for example. So work on positive things. Rules will be things like no jewelry, no watches, and blah blah. Those are simple rules as you're gonna set up for your own class. But then I think a good idea is first week of school to start by creating an essential agreement. And it might take you 10-15 minutes of your lesson, 20 minutes, but they will set up the whole lesson, because once you do this essential agreement with your class, you can empower them to either sign it over it. So you're gonna agree, okay, we're gonna talk about involvement. We all gonna decide that we're all gonna put our best in to achieve our goals for this year in PE. Agree, agree. Some you're gonna help them, some comes from them. And then you can let them sign. It can be a thumb, like you choose a color, a simple washing color. You put the thumb on the poster, and what you can do, you can have that poster for the whole year, or at least for the beginning, put in some corner of your gym. And every time there's some issues, like management issues, behavior, safety, you will refer back to that essential agreement, because it was done with them. You agree with your students. And this gives them a little bit of, I would say, responsibility over anything happens in the lesson. It's very useful. It works.
We got another question from the Tazzle that said, could you share a great lesson or activity for a specific learner profile? Do we want some clarification on what they mean by specific learner profile?
Yes, communication. For example, communication, you look into an invasion game, you can talk to them. So you start up, obviously depends on the grade level. If it's a grade 2, 3, it's more difficult. 4, 5, it's easier. This is still primary, right? So you look into communication, especially when you play games. You can do some preparing games like bench ball, or a simple capture the flag game, but obviously you're going to go into a basketball. Might be hard for them to play the full rules, but then you can put an emphasis on the communication as a learner profile, as a communicator, how important it is to use both verbal and non-verbal. Because obviously, if you want to surprise your opponent, you want to say, I'm here, I'm open. You want to go behind, sneak in, find the right place, and find the empty space, and maybe just have a signal. Raise your hand, or or clap your hand, whatever you choose as your team signal. And this is how you develop, and you emphasize the importance of talking to themselves all the time. Same in soccer, in football, here, same thing. All the time, warning the player with the ball. You have the ball, you need to warn the player. Look, you have time, look around, or you have trash on you. So this is one of the good examples. You do something new. Like in my one of the units, you do something completely new for them. Look into risk taking, which some schools don't approve it, but just taking that challenge to do something new. You can find links for every single one. Daniel?
Yeah, that's what we did for risk taker in our parkour unit. And we went outside and we looked at jumping off of and onto certain things in our playground, and then the kids came up with an appropriate risk or inappropriate risk. And a risk taker, I mean, it can be physical risk. It can also be it takes a risk to share an idea that I'm not sure is right. And there's all of these kind of connections. I think it is not natural for me yet as a new PYP teacher to always grab all those connections that are there, and I think that's the beauty of it. As we go along, we'll be able to draw out those connections within every lesson, really. As we stated earlier, planning for it is important, but a lot of times these things just come up organically, and so knowing, I mean, I think communicator, risk taker, thinker, open-minded is designed as more life skills as well that every teacher is trying to incorporate into their students, right?
And I agree with both of those. Like, communicator plays a big role in a lot of my units, but reflective. I'm constantly asking kids at the end of each lesson, the end of each unit especially, to reflect, what have we learned, what have we done? And that goes back to, like Evan just said, with the risk-taking, like with our athletics unit, which includes swimming, running, throwing, jumping. How were you taking risk in this unit? How did you do this? And we don't use the term risk taker at our school. It's a Taiwanese thing. So we use the word courageous. How would you courageous in this moment? And a lot of my kids are, we tried to swim across the pool by ourselves without using a pull buoy or, things like that. So it's, like Evan said, it's incorporated into all of our units. I don't really do specific lessons based on each profile. I just try to incorporate them throughout everything and use the terminology, because the terminology, if you look at my school, there's posters that have the learner profiles and the learner attitudes throughout our school building, especially in the PYP halls. And then it's something I've added to the indoor space I have this year, is I have walls that are just covered with posters and ideas that either I found via online, like Andy Vassley, or the kids made last year for me.
So we just got a really good question from Kent. It says, how can you do essential agreements with 23 different classes? Does each class have different agreements?
Yes. Yes, because, sorry Daniel, because I have this problem now. I'm teaching, well, it depends, 23 classes, oh my goodness. I have here 23 classes. That's a lot. I have here about 9 classes. And yes, you as a teacher decide what you want to go for. Like for me, the first week, it's not about the content. It doesn't matter. The first week, I think it's twice. We play some cooperation games, just getting to know each other. The students, they change classes. So grade 5 class this year has different composition than the grade 4. And yes, you spend time and you sit down with your class. At least it takes about 25 now, about half of one lesson. You sit down with all the class. Now, being my 3rd year, I know all the apples I have in my bag, most of them, so I know where to guide it, as you know the kids you're teaching. And you sit down and you create something might be similar, but you create a completely different essential agreement with your class. If it comes from them, it is more powerful. You can guide them a little bit, but if it comes from them, it's genuine, and it has power, and then you can use it as a tool when you're going to refrain to those back. So it might be difficult, but I have this opportunity to just give 1 or 2 lessons towards that, because this is the first week. If you set up the direction correctly, you have no problems. You have your own strategies to solve safety issues, who goes a nurse, how you go a nurse, how do you solve that problem, who do you call. things like behavior. How do you sort out things? Do you intervene? Do you let them sort out first? So you always have to get this sort out at the beginning, and then it's going to be easy. It's harder, but then it pays off in long run. Sorry, Daniel.
Oh no, I do it slightly differently than Dan does. I do have the discussion with every class. Last year I had 13 classes. This year I have 11 at the moment, but it looks like it'll be 12 in a couple weeks. But so I do it kind of based by grade level. So if I have like this year I have 3 grade 2 classes. So I'm going to have this discussion, and then I'm going to kind of combine all of their answers onto one, and then come back and have another discussion based on that, and go with that. That way, in my activity center area and whatnot, I'll have, instead of having 11 posters with our EAs on them, I'll just have the 5 with the 5 grade levels I teach. So it breaks it down, makes it a little bit more manageable. And since I teach outside so much, I make a letter size document also that I carry in my binder, and I go from there. So that makes a difference. And Daniel, 27 classes, that's just too many. Sorry, I saw that on Tozzle just now. So most I ever had was 17. So
that's interesting. 23.
yeah.
How do you remember the names of all the kids? How long it takes you to get all the names? You're gonna have them wear badges the first 1 month?
Evan, did you have anything else to add right now?
No, I mean, just on that note of that many classes, like I think we do realize, we're somewhat spoiled, like in the just coming from school in America last year, we're definitely somewhat spoiled in the smaller class sizes, the amount of planning time we have, and sometimes more time we get to see the students. So it's different in the types of things you can tackle, and I mean, you just have to do what's best for you in your school situation too, right?
Yeah, and just to feed off what Daniel just wrote on Tozzle about he creates 3 essential agreements or essentials, and then the students just fill in the kind of details. I've used that idea back in the States just for time. I had one school I saw the kids once a week for 35 minutes, which is not enough time, but that's a great way to do it, I think. As long as you have that sit-down conversation with your students at the beginning of the year, it's just like in the classroom anywhere else. If you get it started, like Dan was saying earlier, at the beginning of the year, it's going to take care of so many issues throughout the year. Yes, it's a lot of work to begin with, but it's worth it. Hopefully hopefully y'all agree with me.
Yeah, and that goes along with setting up like the visible thinking routines and the turn and talk and whatever we want to do, because a part of the PYP, at least that has been freeing for me, is there's genuinely care about the whole child, and what, as much as sometimes we say that, or at least my experience in America, sometimes we say that, but then it's still like, test, 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 and so that we remember like these little humans in front of us, and it's like you build those relationships, like we all know, and you feel like you can take the time to do that, and you just set it up for success that way by taking that time if you need it. And the PYP like truly values all of those skills, all of those things that set you up for being a lifelong learner, which I really appreciate.
And I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I know
I'll Sarah. It's a big thing that we have to pop up a little bit.
No, we have about a minute, but if you need to go over that time, it's totally fine. We just can't go. We just can't go 10 more minutes.
Well, what I was going to say, if anybody has any questions for any of us, and this is not just today, but any time in the future, find us on Twitter, find us on an email, whatever. All of us are given time differences and all that. We're willing to answer and ask questions. I know that's how I've learned a lot in the past couple of years, moving abroad and whatnot. So just being willing to ask questions. And I mean, Sarah was a great help last year answering some of those questions.
Look at us, Daniel. I met you for 10 minutes at APAC because you come from the school I met Christian, and now we're just like here online doing this stuff, and then you brought in Evan. Anyway, Sarah, I will send you the link after you have it for our presentation, so we can add that as a resource at the end of the session. But I want to move forward, which I think it's a little bit tricky in our PYP setup, is the assessment. And that's one thing that we might be, if you're okay, guys, to close in. It's a big chunk that I'd like to talk about assessment. How do we see assessment? how do we do it, what's the difference between formative and summative, and just give an example, how are you doing it? Because I think the audience will love to hear that.
Well, mine's a variety of things, you know. So it's a lot of reflective style questioning, and I can do that using clickers, using thumbs up, thumbs down, number scale 1 through 4 is what my kids are used to. And I have charts all around the school that identify with that. So it's a lot of self-reflection with the kids. And then, of course, at the same time, they're self-reflecting. I'm looking, okay, Joe did this, Sally did this, Jill did this. And I keep a binder I've always got their names and their, you know, if they're there and whatnot. So maybe not the best system, but it's what works for me. So
do you record them as well? Do you record them like on Manage Back, or what are you guys using?
We have our own system that we set up on. It's not the best, but report cards and notes, and I can also go into Google Classroom and communicate with parents via that. So,
Evan, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, for the upper elementary, it's a lot of reflection, and that's I've been a little bit better, but still, it's certainly not a strength of mine. I give a lot of formative feedback, and that's you know, generally not. It's just in the moment. But as far as the actual summative, some, you know, the students will videotape a creation, like in our movement composition unit, and then, you know, self-assess. We just have simple rubrics, but a lot of it is trying to get them to, at least in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, try to look at what they did in themselves. The younger students is still a lot of checklists and how are you going on a lot, you know, fundamental movement skills. What about you?
Well, we got 2 things. We use Manage Back. So we have the reporting cards where you have each kid individual. You go into our scope and sequence and you just write a few words from there, and you just have it basically individualized to each student. And that's, I think, the hard part of reporting. Luckily, we do twice a year, and you'll have the 5 standards, which will have like from the top: exceeding, consolidating, achieving, developing, and beginning. So this is our 5 strands we're looking into, like as reporting cards. But I want to give an example because I think the audience would like that. Give an example of an evasion game unit. How can you structure formative and summative assessment? And even this sounds complicated, it's quite simple. I saw one of your slides, the last slide, when you were saying about what do we know about evasion games, or that can be a formative assessment question. We can choose to do it individually, or you can choose to do it as a class. Things of can you name few games, or things that what do a player needs to be a good striker. So all these kind of questions that go week by week. I think if you go yourself in arm with 1 or 2 questions, that's a good formative assessment, and I think it's more powerful than the summative. You look into the summative, you can just ask them to create, you know, formation and explain to you why they put a player in that position, and they have to make sure they look into what defines the game, the rules, the boundaries, the time, the scoring, because they at the beginning, like, okay, so we're gonna play a football match for how long? Sometimes you help them because they don't think about time. They think, oh, we just play. But then, do we have any time management? Do we need to stop after a certain time? Also, you can ask them to just, you know, name some of the skills that a striker, or in football, a striker should have or advantages him. Same in basketball, you look into what makes a defender a good defender. So if you are instructing them, all the unit, with these formative questions, it's easy to set up. And yes, you can use Google Forms to send. You can use a simple printout paper. You can do it. Depends how your school set up. And I think that gives you, because you want to know if they know. Because again, you're planning for them, not for you. So when you're planning for them, you have to make sure that, oh, they got it. They might not be excellent players in a specific sport, but they get it. They know what they're doing. So that, I think, it's very important.
You know, Dan, you've been frequently mentioning like example questions that you could ask your students, and I think that for some of us who probably use inquiry but don't really realize that we use inquiry, or for those of us who are interested in it but maybe the websites seem a little too overwhelming to us because we're not in an IB school, I think it would be really beneficial if there was some type of a Google Doc, or maybe there is a website that's really easy to navigate that just has a list of all the different types of questions you could ask students. And even if it was just a couple from different, the different game categories for TGFU or the 5 themes that you guys teach within your PYP PE curriculum, it would be such a great springboard for other teachers. Like what makes a defender a good defender? I'm thinking like, holy cow, I teach middle school. Why haven't I been asking that question? And then I also am wondering if the questions that I ask, along with the other secondary teachers that I know through Twitter, if the questions that we're asking are too easy, because I often notice that they're the same questions that Andy Vasily and Andy Hare and Evan's example he showed earlier are the questions that we're asking. Maybe we get different answers, but maybe we don't.
Well, I went exactly on the same website that we put in the resource. Like I found it very useful. ITZ, Nathan Horns, Andy Vassil's PYP Andy. I really recommend if you have the time, or who has the time, and they should find time to listen to the podcast, the new podcast. There's some really good guests, and you look deeper into the enduring understanding and how they structure that. And also, I think if you just go and I'm thinking that at some point they're going to challenge these guys. They're going to set up a sort of forums just to share with people. So just finding the right. It's also the right question is the right group you teach. So even if you put the same question, you have to put the question and be paying attention to what they say. And you may take some notes, because then if you go in, I saw the question on that website. What makes a good defender? You put it, you move on. That's it. It won't help you. It won't help them. You put the question. You listen and you take notes on the way back. The classroom, just quick in your mind, and then you can go back and look into those answers. Why they said that way, and how can you structure for better questions? And what I do sometimes, Google, what is the best question to put for this topic? And sometimes it comes out really good. It wasn't one on IBO.org was one of our articles, 100 best questions to be put on. Just finding resources. But yes, agree. At some point, it will be nice to have set up a sort of platform for that.
I can work on that. That's not an issue at all. An easy setup. So
create a trio platform from China, Taiwan, and Korea.
Well, add in the U.S. too. So.
Awesome. Well, I think
Romania.
Romania. I love it. Transylvania, right? So I think we should probably.
Exactly.
I think we should probably start wrapping things up, and I just really want to thank the 3 of you for being a part of the Phys Ed Summit. We really loved learning from you guys, and I want to thank all of the participants that were part of this. I just want to remind everybody again that there is a feedback survey. It is already posted on physedagogy.com. If you're in need of a certificate to receive professional development credits through your school district where you teach, then you can just go to the survey, take it, and then we will automatically send you a certificate via email. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope you guys have a great morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
Big regards to Bodhi family. We're all with you.
Yes, Bodhi strong.
Go ahead.
That's right.